devoted much of my life to advancing a partnership between our countries. Appropriate that at the age of 75 I be permitted to reflect a bit on that relationship and speak at least briefly about its future. To begin with a few thoughts about our past. The thing that strikes me most, particularly when I come here, is that the world and our two countries and our relationship has changed so dramatically. When I arrived in Tokyo, as Mr. Takagi has said, Japan as number one was still very much in vogue. Now, with the Cold War over and the Soviet Union gone, some might have expected we would abandon our overseas alliances and return to tackle domestic problems. Of course, we did no such thing. And looking back, I don't recall hardly anybody proposing that we amend the security treaty, let alone terminate it. We did begin to describe its mission as a hedge against uncertainties rather than a deterrent against a very specific threat. Even though we didn't try and amend the treaty, our alliance during my tenure here experienced difficulties, troubles during the early 1990s. Relations in those days were also fraught with difficulties. We managed a variety of quite complex negotiations, which opened some markets and relieved some political pressures, at least in Washington. Today, our relationship is substantially stronger and it's broader in scope than it was. And I would attribute this to a number of developments. In the field of security, Japan reviewed and amended some of the self-imposed limits on your defense policy, particularly prohibitions on overseas security responsibilities and overseas deployments of self-defense forces, and restrictions on your ability to either transfer military technology or export some equipment to the United States. In the economic realm, meanwhile, the flows of goods and services and technology and capital between our countries expanded dramatically in volume and in value. The bilateral trade disputes between us diminished in their frequency and their intensity, and our Congress became highly preoccupied with our deficit with China, which I must say eased our day-to-day relations with Japan. On the American side, meanwhile, the Obama administration has announced a number of steps designed to provide a clearer and sharper focus on our interests in Asia. I think the description of this as a pivot back to Asia was an unfortunate misnomer, because you can't return really to a region that you never left. Nonetheless, we were highly distracted for at least a decade by events in the Middle East and in South Asia. I think the components of this focus on Asia are clear. One is to revitalize our alliances in Northeast Asia, to raise modestly our security profile in Southeast Asia, and to seek to quarantine our position in this region from looming cuts in the Pentagon budget. The second is the effort to extend our economic cooperation in Asia by promoting free trade agreements through the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The third is to participate more actively in regional institutions. The Bush administration was essentially an observer in Asian regional institutions. The current administration has sought more actively to participate. Fourth, we're utilizing more energetic diplomacy to encourage political reforms in a pariah country with which we had very little to do for 4 decades, Myanmar. Delicate balance between engagement with China and hedging against its growing power. All these strands of policy, it seemed to me, enjoy bipartisan support in the United States. These are all, I think, very encouraging trends. But I don't think they provide the basis for any complacency. Why? The first, I think our alliance is very solid, but we devote too much of our time in recent years to second-tier base issues and insufficient time to the larger security environment in Asia and how we should properly respond to it. And our domestic situations have changed pretty drastically. So we both got some big-time problems on our domestic front. We have a saying that when times are tough, the tough get going. And these are difficult times, and our domestic circumstances, I believe, make broader collaboration between us more valuable and more necessary. Moment, I think, to pay more attention to the difficulties each of us face and to figure out how we can help each other in dealing with them. One pertinent example comes immediately to mind in the field of energy security. I read last week that your last nuclear reactor was now down for normal maintenance. And as I understand it, that means that 30% of a major source of electricity is no longer available, at least for the time being. Natural gas is a logical alternative. As I understand it, both your private sector and your government are actively promoting the diversification of sources, particularly including natural gas. Now, when we look at the situation as Americans, what can we do to help? Well, one thing, we can work together to enhance the safety of nuclear reactors. We can jointly look at ways in which to clean up the remains of the Fukushima disaster. We've had similar disaster, not a disaster like that, but we've had experience in cleaning up nuclear facilities. We can together look for more efficient ways of utilizing energy. Though in that field, I think we have more to learn from you, surely, than you have to learn for us. Most importantly, we can export LNG. Appropriate segue to another subject which has come up, namely liberalization of international trade through the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I personally wish more effort was put into revitalizing multilateral trade. Trade is best expanded when the rules apply to everybody, but it does seem that the Doha round is dead. However, Japan's approach to the TPP appears quite tentative, and America's attitude toward Japan's participation seems a little ambivalent. I suppose this is understandable in view of the resistance of your agricultural interests and the anxieties of our auto industry. Those who are negotiating don't see this as a means of isolating or containing China. After all, how can you create a strong regional trade arrangement if the door is not open to the area's most vibrant economy? And for that matter, how likely is it that China would opt for eventual association with the TPP if they have no involvement in designing the rules for its operation? So I hope the current consultations that are taking place will swiftly yield an invitation, formal invitation for Japan to join, and a swift and affirmative response. It's not my job to advise Japan how to deal with China, but I would like to offer just a brief reflection on how I think it's appropriate for Americans to think about the China challenge. The first point I would make is I admire what China has accomplished in the last 3 decades. Observe closely as China has rapidly increased its military capabilities on the margins of its economic growth. In my view, though, China is no juggernaut that is about to roll over us. Finally, though, China is no doubt changing the security equation in this region. Above all, it's rapidly building a blue water navy. and it's augmenting its capabilities in cyberspace and in outer space. And all these were fields in which we regarded as domains in which we didn't have much competition, you and we. I think it's healthy that we have initiated trilateral consultations with India, with Australia, we talk with the Koreans. And I also believe that it's quite appropriate to explore the possibilities for a trilateral dialogue with China to better understand the interests that motivate them and to avoid crises and to cope with incidents when they occur. Challenges we face are not unfamiliar, they're not insurmountable. We have a little time to get our house in order. But I think the question is whether we can muster the unity of purpose, the sense of urgency, and the political will to do so. And each of us will be in a better position to deal with the other if we do that and do it properly. If we do, I think our relations with China will prove readily manageable. More importantly, I think the U.S.-Japan partnership, which is so vital to us, will be quite secure. As far as energy in the region, I think it's perfectly appropriate as a subject for regional cooperation. We're in the unusual position I described of returning perhaps to export energy. But I've often thought for decades that East Asia and the United States tended to share the interests of importers and consumers of energy. And as such, we have a stake in keeping prices reasonably low. We have a stake in looking for appropriate alternatives, particularly renewable. We have a stake in having arrangements in place to deal with emergencies. We have an interest in dealing with the environmental byproducts of energy production. So there are plenty of things on which we can beneficially discuss. And I think, unfortunately, in the global institutions that deal with energy, the IEA, well, the US and Japan and Korea have been members as a result of being OECD members. There was a curious provision when the IEA was established that membership in the OECD seemed to be a prerequisite to joining the International Energy Agency. And the result of that has been that a lot of consequential countries in Asia are not members. So the global institutions have not misrepresentation, but insufficient representation. And the regional dialogue, until recently, has been not particularly active. So I hope your recommendation that this be high on the agenda for the East Asian Summit is one that's realized. It seems to be entirely appropriate. Well, I think China is very different than the Soviet Union. Mainly because throughout the history of our post-war history of our relationship with the Soviet Union, they were a military power of recognized strength, and we had virtually no economic relationship with them at all. So we start with a big stake in managing our relationship with China differently because we have huge equities in a peaceful management of a relationship that is so broad economically and across the board. And I think there's a bigger disparity in our power with China than there was with the Soviet Union. In the end, the Soviet Union proved to be a quite brittle society and was weaker than most of our analysts assumed. China, I think we may tend to exaggerate their capabilities at this point because we kind of make a linear extrapolation of what they've done in the last 30 years and assume they'll continue progressing at the same rate, which I think is very unlikely. We have a bigger stake in managing things peacefully, and so far I think we're doing reasonably well. I think the trick will be in the current year, to prevent our election politics from souring the atmosphere. I think there haven't Both parties have taken shots at the Chinese. They've been relatively modest by historical standards.